Good afternoon, friends. Another important video on GST input tax credit. As per second proviso of section 16 subsection 2 of CGST Act, if buyer recipient fails to pay, word used fails to pay, value and tax charge on the invoice or debit note within 180 days from the date of issuance of such invoice or debit note, then the buyer and recipient has to reverse input tax credit taken on such invoice or debit note along with interest at the rate of 18% per annum. And such recipient or buyer can avail the credit once they make the payment, value and tax. So this is the second proviso, which is of section 16 subsection 2. A lot of queries around. Let me first resolve what is not applicable for this 180 days criteria as per second proviso. Any RCM liability, if you are paying under reverse charge as a recipient, then this 180 days criteria are not applicable. If partial payment as against total invoice, if you make partial payment, then reversal would be required only to the extent of partial amount which is not being paid. If the invoice for 100 rupees, 18% GST, you paid 50 rupees and corresponding tax 9 rupees, then only to the extent of 50 rupees, 9 rupees credit, that need to be reversed along with interest if not paid within 180 days from the date of issuance of invoice. Third, Schedule 1 transaction. There are 4 para and entries under Schedule 1. Even without consideration like supply of goods or services between related person or distinct person, para 2, in the course of furtherance of business, even without consideration is a deemed supply, then this 180 days criteria is not applicable for Schedule 1 transaction. Coming to the fourth, if supplier is liable for any expenses but incurred by the recipient under section 15 subsection 2 clause B, then for such expenses 180 days criteria provisions are not applicable. So these are the 4 exceptions: RCM, Schedule 1, partial payment, and expenses liable to be incurred by the supplier but incurred by the recipient. As per section 15 subsection 2 clause B, it was liable for the supplier. Supplier was supposed to pay but incurred by the recipient. So 4 exceptions. What are the burning issues coming out in this second proviso of 180 days criteria? First, if there is AR and AP, so you need to pay and you need to collect situation. AR, AP, so you become debtor also, you become creditor also, and you net off the amount. Will it be considered that you have made the payment towards the invoice within 180 days so that no reversal required? Yes. If there is ARAP adjustment, this is as good as payment made. Financial transaction is being net off, hence to that extent no reversal. It will be considered as if payment is being made. And even Tamil Nadu AAAR authority in the case of MRF Limited has said, when you are doing this financial adjustment of ARAP, account receivable and account payment, आपको कुछ देना है और सामने वाले से कुछ लेना है, तो आप नेट ऑफ कर सकते हैं. जब आप नेट ऑफ कर सकते हैं तो स्पेसिफिक पेमेंट नहीं आएगा. उतना नेट ऑफ जो आप कर रहे हैं उसको डीम्ड पेमेंट मान लिया जाएगा. तो मान लीजिए मैंने आपसे 100 रुपए का माल खरीदा, 18 रुपए उस पर जीएसटी थे, और मैंने आपको बेचा भी 50 रुपए और उस पर 9 रुपए का जीएसटी था, 18%. तो अब नेट 50 रुपीज और 9 रुपीज देना लेना था. अगर मैंने नेट आपको 50 रुपीज और 9 रुपीज टैक्सेस के दे दिए, तो इसका मतलब ये है कि मैंने टोटल इनवॉइस का पेमेंट आपको कर दिया. हेंस नो रिवर्सल रिक्वायर्ड. दिस इज द मीनिंग कमिंग आउट. सेकंड बर्निंग इशू, because of COVID-19, business is disrupted. Working capital is in crisis for lot many taxpayer and businessmen. Sometimes there is a force majeure clause in the contract, and sometimes there is no force majeure clause in the contract. If there is a force majeure clause and COVID-19 situation is like this, you fails to pay because of COVID-19. As a recipient, as a buyer, you fails to pay because of COVID-19 lockdown, business disrupt, and there is a clause force majeure in the contract. Can it be termed that you could not pay within 180 days? Or the period of lockdown should be excluded for the purpose of calculation of 180 days. If force majeure clause exists, lockdown is there, business was closed, you can exclude such period for the calculation of 180 days. Hence, for this lockdown period, no reversal of ITC, input tax credit. अगर फोर्स मेजर क्लॉज नहीं है, हो सकता है ना, पॉसिबल कि नहीं है, बट बायर एंड सप्लायर, supplier and recipient coming together, sitting and negotiating a fresh date for payment of invoice because of COVID-19 situation. So both the party to the contract coming in and deciding a fresh date, future date for payment, will fails to pay provision is applicable. In my humble opinion, then there is no fails to pay. Both parties coming together, deciding a new date, negotiating a new date, looking at the business scenario, then this fails to pay will not come into the picture. Hence, no reversal of ITC. Coming to the third, and to just endorse my view, sometimes credit terms are being given more than 6 months, more than a year. When credit term itself is 1 year, can we say there it fails to pay? 180 days from date of issuance of invoice, when both have agreed for a longer credit terms, then to my mind, as per my humble opinion, there is no fails to pay. And it will not be applicable. Second proviso of section 16 subsection 2 is not applicable for reversal of input tax credit. So I given you a brief overview, burning part of this particular issue, and a lot of things surround particular this provision. In my humble opinion, I clarified that what should be and how we have to interpret the second proviso for reversal of ITC. If you don't pay as a buyer, if you don't pay within 180 days from date of issuance of invoice, Just one point, that if at all we are interpreting this provision, if you don't pay within 180 days, then you need to reverse credit along with interest at the rate of 18% per annum. You can avail credit whenever you pay, but this interest which you paid becomes cost. So this is overall summary of this second proviso of section 16 subsection 2 of CGST Act. Stay tuned, lot more on GST. Thank you very much.